Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone. So in today's video, we're going to be continuing our read aloud of The Secret Zoo, The Final Fight. Last time we finished, we completed chapter 37, so we'll be reading chapter 38 today. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the read today, and without further ado, let's jump in. Chapter 38, Moments After Midnight. Podgy took the shortcut through the Forest of Flight and then turned onto the same street where they'd started. Lots of latte was in plain view, which meant the mirage was down. Thousands of fireflies speckled the air, and the chameleons crawled all around. People were standing outside the coffee shop. Jordan, Ella, Megan, Richie, Tank, and Mr. Darby, who was feeding his arms through the sleeves of his velvet jacket, looking sore and tired. Podgy touched down beside the group, and Noah stepped away from the perfect landing as Marlowe landed on his shoulder. Tank held up a trench coat and a fedora for Noah to see. "He's dead." Noah scanned his friend's expressions. "Are you sure?" Tank smiled and nodded. "We saw his bones turn to dust. And look," Tank pointed to the sky. "The storm is clearing." Noah looked up and saw the clouds beginning to shine beneath new starlight. "The multi-point," Ella said to Noah. "What happened?" "It worked," Noah said, and he told them about his improvisation, how the hummingbirds were holding up the primary portal in the ravine. "The animals are coming through, and they all look normal." "Noah!" Megan blurted as she pointed to a place behind him. "Mom and Dad!" Noah spun around and saw his parents being led their way by two of the security guards from Noah's house. They'd come from a building down the street. A makeshift prison, it seemed. The guards, like Charlie Red and the animals, were out from under DeGraff's spell. When Mr. and Mrs. Nowicki spotted their children, they ran over and wrapped Noah and Megan in their arms. "Are you okay?" Mrs. Nowicki asked as she held Megan's shoulders and looked her over. "Your hands," she said, noticing the firefly's wounds on both Megan and Noah's palms. "It's nothing," Megan said. "Are you hurt?" Mrs. Nowicki shook her head. "Those men," she said, pointing to the security guards. "They took us. They—" She suddenly glanced around, as if she just noticed the city. Where are we?" Mr. Darby answered. "The secret zoo." "The secret what?" "The city of species," Mr. Darby said. "A place just beyond your world." Mrs. Nowicki looked around at the group and seemed to consider this. I don't understand." "Magic," Megan said. "Magic created this place." "But magic isn't real." "Tell that to this one," Mr. Darby said, and he gestured to Blizzard, who had charged across the street to join the group. Noah's parents jumped back as Blizzard strolled up to Noah. "It's okay," Noah said as he put his hand on Blizzard's back. "He's our friend." Mrs. Nowicki stared at Blizzard, wide-eyed, and gently shook her head. He's a bear." "And this guy's a penguin," Ella said, gesturing to Podgy. "A big one. He flies too, which is pretty cool." Mrs. Nowicki shook her head again. A thought seemed to strike her, and she lowered her gaze at Megan. "Is this where you disappeared to? Those 3 weeks? Were you here?" Megan nodded. "I'm sorry we lied. We had to. And then we had to keep so many secrets from you and Dad. It never felt right, but we didn't have a choice." Her mother looked around and seemed to consider all of this. After a few seconds, she said, "Volunteering at the zoo?" Megan shook her head. "We made it up." She told her mother about joining the secret society as crossers, and then she explained what crossers did. Mrs. Nowicki stared at the sights again. She started to say something more, and then she stopped. Noah looked past his parents, saw the security guards again, and thought of Charlie Red. He told the group what happened to Charlie, how Noah had saved his life by throwing him into the river. We'll deal with him, Mr. Darby said. Justly. Then he touched the transmit button on his headset and ordered a group of descenders to search for Charlie. A coterie of prairie dogs scurried up and started sniffling the ground, a few paying particular attention to Richie's flashing running shoes, the way they often did. When P-Dog stood up on his haunches by Ella, she leaned over and patted his head. "It's over, P," Ella said. "We did it." P-Dog sniffed the air, and Noah wondered if a world without DeGraff had a different smell. Sam joined the group, along with Tamarin, who was leaning on his friend for support. Hannah ran up too. They were smiling and looking relieved, and Noah realized they had already gotten the news. Secret citizens were re-entering the city from various places in the secret zoo, building sectors and houses just beyond the outskirts of the city. Parents and children were hugging one another and staring into the sky, which continued to clear. Some started to dance, and small fireworks began to go off, streaking color across the night and startling birds out of the trees. Zack appeared, along with the other few technicals, young adults with wild haircuts and electrical gadgets clipped to their hips. They looked like geeks from another world, which Noah realized they pretty much were. "Awesome work," Zack said to Noah, and he held out his hand toward him, not for a handshake or a high five, but something in between. Noah half clapped and half shook Zack's hand. "It worked. The multi-point. It worked just like you said it would." Zack winked. "That's what the techs do, bro. We make things work." "Hannah," Mr. Darby said, "please gather a crew of crossers who live on the outside and have them make sure no animals are loose in Clarksville. Now that DeGraff's magic is gone, they should be able to take down the portals to Earth. Have them decommission all the portals but the one in Noah's kitchen. Commence with Operation Division and quickly come back." Hannah nodded. Then she looked at the scouts, a hint of sadness in their eyes, and ran off. Noah turned to Mr. Darby, who must have seen his concern, because he said, "The portals are essentially broken now, Noah. Remember what we talked about." As he watched Hannah leave, he said, "Besides, this is the best way, the safest way." Noah wondered if the safest way was always the best, but he kept quiet. Mrs. Nowicki said, I don't understand. All the portals. What are you talking about?" As Mr. Darby started to explain, Richie pointed off into the distance, shouting, "Look! The animals!" Different animals were coming through the gateway to Koala Castle, an internal portal that hadn't been affected by the multipoint. They'd found a way to get up the mountainside. Various species quickly crowded the street, and as the night sky continued to brighten, the city of species began to look the way it had once before, like an enchanting place from a child's daydream. More fireworks boomed. Music had started playing, and more people were dancing. Children began to ride the animals. Little Bighorn appeared, gently nudging Ella with his enormous snout. Ella laughed and hugged the better part of his massive neck. "Ella," Mrs. Nowicki said, "your mother, does she know about this place?" Ella shook her head. "We're the only ones. And you and Mr. Nowicki." "I'll have to tell her. Richie's parents, too." "That won't be necessary," Mr. Darby said. "Our adventure together has come to a close." Noah stared at Mr. Darby, feeling pride because they'd won, but sadness too. "It doesn't have to be," Megan suddenly said. "DeGraff is gone, but there are more ways we can help." Mr. Darby smiled and shook his head. "You have already given us more than we could have asked for." "Yeah, but the Secret Society would have to build a new portal to your world, one for only you and your friends. I don't think that's wise now, Megan. We can operate as we once did to conserve animals, in individual groups. I think the time has come for you to return to your lives. Fully. Your world needs you. I know your parents would agree. Mrs. Nowicki nodded. Megan, we need you home. She gazed at the city again. I don't know what this place is, but you can't stay here. I don't want to stay, Mom. I just wish I could come back. Once in a while. Her voice wavered with emotion. We have friends here. Family. Mr. Darby smiled. Dear Megan, I know how you feel. Goodbye is never easy. Not for anyone. Blizzard strolled over to Megan and forced his snout under her hand so that she would pet him. Noah's mom, seeing this, took a step toward Blizzard and then stopped, and Noah could tell she was trying to convince herself that her daughter was safe. Podgy walked over to Noah and stood close. He seemed to understand that the scouts were preparing for their final goodbyes. Megan, Mr. Nowicki said, I'm your father. He put his hand on his wife's shoulder and added, We're your parents. Whatever this place is, no matter how incredible it is, we have to keep you safe. We have to do that because it's our responsibility. And because we love you. Noah glanced at Podgy, P-Dog, Blizzard. He could see sadness in the eyes of his animal companions. Richie kneeled and more than a dozen prairie dogs tried to climb up his legs. Richie started petting them, doing his best to give them equal time. Then he picked up P-Dog and held him tight. Maybe you could put our animal friends in the Clarksville Zoo, Richie said, his voice filled with hope. You know, Blizzard, Little Bighorn, Podgy. Maybe they could come home with us. Mr. Darby smiled, a sad smile. They're gifted, Richie. They belong here, with the magic. Noah sensed a larger crowd gathering. He looked over his shoulder and saw more people and animals all around. They'd come to see the scouts leave their world for the final time. It's okay, dear, Mr. Darby said to Ella, who was crying and hugging Little Bighorn. Noah felt a swirl of emotions as memories of adventures with their rhino friend flashed in his head. Storming into the Darklands, the police standoff in Clarksville Elementary, the rescue from the zoo that he and Blizzard had been transferred to. Little Bighorn had been with the scouts since the day they discovered the secret zoo. Hey! Ella said, as she chuckled as tears continued to stream down her cheeks. Ko, the koala she'd befriended in Koala Castle, had climbed onto her back. Tank started to laugh, a deep booming sound that reminded Noah of the fireworks being set off. I can't take you with me, Ko, Ella said as she gently pried the koala off her back and then set her on the ground. Not this time. There won't be another time, Noah thought. He felt an animal climbing up his leg, and he looked down to see Louie, the otter that had clung to him when Noah had ridden the glass slide from the water park. Noah laughed and stroked Louie's long back. The otter, apparently satisfied, returned to the noisy crowd, moonlight gleaming on his sleek fur. Mr. and Mrs. Nowicki stood by, pulling away from the animals that were too close. It's a dream, Noah's father said to his mother. Noah smiled. We all thought that, Dad. His father cupped his hand behind his ear to show he hadn't heard. Noah continued to smile. Never mind. A firefly touched down on Noah's sleeve. It blinked once, twice, quick spots of yellow light. Noah wondered if the insect had any idea of what it and the other fireflies had just accomplished. He softly closed his uninjured hand around the firefly, watched it blink once, and then gently tossed it into the air, just as another burst of fireworks went off in the distance. Sam turned to Noah. He adjusted his leather jacket and said, This is it, huh? This is goodbye? Yeah, Noah said. I guess so. The silence that followed was weighty and awkward. Noah tried to hold Sam's gaze, but couldn't. When he reached out his hand for the descender to shake, Sam grabbed it and pulled Noah in for a hug. Then he backed away, saying, "Thanks for all your help." Noah thought of something. "The patrols of Clarksville Zoo, do you think—" Sam shook his head. "Not after Operation Division. We'll stay on the inside." He half frowned and half smiled. Then he stepped back to give someone else a turn with Noah. All the specters except Evie pushed through the crowd and walked up to say their goodbyes. Ella hugged each of them and then said something that made the 5 girls laugh. Richie, noticing this, stepped forward. "I don't get it. Why does she make you laugh so much?" Alakshi said. "Ah, because she's funny." "Funny? She's funny?" He turned directly to the specters and said, "Alright, see if you get this one." He cleared his throat and added, "What's white and furry and shaped like a tooth?" The specters traded empty glances. Alakshi shrugged. Richie waited a few seconds, and then he trumpeted, "A molar bear!" No one laughed. The only sounds were the noisy crowd and the booming fireworks. Richie looked at the descenders, and then at his friends. "So, it's really not funny?" he asked, sounding surprised. Alakshi smiled. "It's cute." Then she leaned forward and planted a quick kiss on Richie's cheek. "Like you." Richie's face turned as red as his hat. He took a quick step back as everyone laughed. The scouts spent the next 15 minutes or so saying goodbye to the specters, the descenders, and the animals they'd shared adventures with. When they were approached by Daisy, the ape who'd helped them get into the secret zoo, Noah remembered how he and his friends had crossed Metropolis by swinging from the hands of apes in the tall trees. When a swarm of chickadees flew around them, Noah thought of when the small birds had welcomed the scouts to the secret society by carrying them above the streets. When a Goliath frog hopped up, Noah recalled the time the enormous frogs had saved them from the Sasquatches in Pollywog Bog. "I don't want to go," Richie said, and Noah realized his best friend was talking to him. "I mean, I do want to go, just not forever." "I know," Noah said. He thought of all their animal friends and added, "I don't want to either." He had to raise his voice to be heard over the celebration going on in the city. "It's like coming to the end of a fairy tale," Megan said, and Noah realized she and Ella were listening. Who wants that? "You can't leave this fairy tale behind," Mr. Darby spoke up. Noah felt a surge of hope, and then realized Mr. Darby probably wasn't being literal. Sure enough, he added, "This fairy tale is part of you now. It helps shape who you are." The old man looked at each of them and then settled his gaze on Richie. "This one, especially, I think." Mr. Darby was right. In the beginning, Richie had hated almost everything about the secret zoo. He'd been afraid of heights, of water, and of almost all of the animals. But just a minute ago, he helped defeat DeGraff. Mr. Darby stepped up to Richie and gripped his shoulder. "Don't forget how brave you can be, young man." Noah expected Richie to respond with a witty remark. Instead, Richie nodded and said, "I won't." Mr. Darby turned to Ella. "And you," he said as he set his open hand over her heart. "Don't be afraid to let your kindness show. It's the finest part of who you are." Ella smiled, nodded, and wiped back a fresh tear. Mr. Darby moved his attention to Megan. "Your adventurous spirit helped write the secret zoo, young lady. I don't doubt that it can do the same for your world." Megan smiled and briefly touched Mr. Darby's hand. Just then, Hannah walked up. "It's done," she said. "There aren't any animals loose in Clarksville." And the outside crossers had already rounded up the ones in Noah's school and sent them back. Every exhibit at the Clarksville Zoo has the normal number of animals. Excellent, Mr. Darby said. And the portals? The crossers have started taking them down. They found the one in Noah's school and took care of it. Noah traded an uneasy look with his friends. A part of him wanted to stop what was happening, but he knew he couldn't. Mr. Darby stood tall and said, Scouts, it sounds like it's time for the four of you to return home. Noah looked at his friends, and again, and saw something he hadn't noticed before. Fatigue. Their eyes were dark and glassy, and their shoulders were slumped. He thought of his bed and a good night's rest without the worry of DeGraff prowling his neighborhood. Then he thought of home, and of how long he had had a foot in two worlds, never being fully present in either. It would feel good to feel whole again. Ella nodded, and then so did Megan and Richie. It was clear that it was time to leave the secret zoo, once more and forever. Noah turned to Mr. Darby and said softly, We're ready. Mr. Darby's forced smile revealed that he had mixed feelings too. He lightly poked Noah's chest and said, What do you plan to do with that? Noah was confused until he looked down and saw straps of his backpack. Oh, he said. Then he looked up and saw Tamarin. Noah had done so much with the tail over the past 2 days, training in the Institute of Light, fighting off Charlie and the Sasquatches, escaping from a stampede. More and more, the tail was becoming to feel like an extension of himself. He looked over and saw his parents. He remembered his old self, the person he'd been before the secret zoo. A brother, a son, a boy from a world with his own type of magic. Love, hope, opportunity. He turned to his friends. They were the best friends he could ever hope for. He grew alongside them, creating a special bond and giving it a name. The Action Scouts. Noah considered these things for a few seconds more. Then he let the strap slip off his shoulders and the backpack fall to the ground. He handed the equipment back to Tamarin, saying, I guess this belongs to you. Yes, Mr. Darby said, but the courage to use it belongs to you. He started to walk off, adding, Come, let us walk you to the door. Noah smiled, knowing that the door was really the gateway to his kitchen. The crowd parted and allowed Mr. Darby through. The scouts followed, and so did the descenders. The specters, Zack, Tank, and the scouts' animal friends. Noah could already see the gateway to his house, a large curtain hovering above the street. As the scouts walked, they'd gaze at the sights, taking in the city's species for the last time. Metropolis, the Forest of Flight, butterfly nets. Noah saw the library of the secret society and recalled sitting by its indoor fountain, colorful leaves falling from the trees like fairy tale snowflakes. The scouts listening to Mr. Darby divulge secrets about the secret zoo. Then he remembered being in the room of reflections, the all-glass area at the top of the library, watching the spectacular video of Marlowe flying through creepy critters. The library of the secret society. So many memories from one place. Noah felt a very heavy arm drape across his shoulders, and he turned to see Tank. The big man smiled with his bright smile and said, We're gonna miss you, bub. Noah, feeling like part of him was already gone, returned Tank's smile and said, We'll miss you too, Tank. A bunch. Jordan had walked over to Ella, and the two were talking. Given enough time, they might have become good friends. But now, they never have that chance. Zack and Richie were saying goodbye again, and Noah couldn't hear much more than but the occasional bro. Here we are, Mr. Darby said. The curtain was an arm's length away, perfectly still now that DeGraff's storm had cleared. Mr. Darby turned to Noah's parents and said, Might I ask a favor? Mr. and Mrs. Nowicki looked at each other skeptically. Then Mrs. Nowicki slowly nodded. I have an important piece of business in Clarksville. He held up his hand toward the portal and added, This is the only way. Noah's parents looked at each other again, each judging the other's reaction. What do you need? Mrs. Nowicki said. Just permission to keep the portal up for a few more minutes. Mrs. Nowicki thought about it. Then she nodded, a bit reluctantly it seemed. Thank you, dear, Mr. Darby said. He turned and stared at his city. He looked at Tank and held his gaze for what seemed like a long time. When Tank nodded, Noah noticed that the big man had tears in his eyes. But before Noah could think about it for long, Mr. Darby abruptly turned and slipped through the portal. Across the city, the fireworks had stopped, and so had the music. Barely anyone was moving or making a sound. All attention was on the scene in front of the portal to Noah's house. The scouts looked out at the magical sights and all the animals and people who had come to see them off. Blizzard, Podgy, P-Dog, Little Bighorn, the Descenders looked solemn. Well, Noah said to Tink, I guess this is it. Tank nodded. The two groups stared at each other for what seemed like eternity. Noah tried to pretend that everything was okay, like this wasn't goodbye forever. Blizzard took a step forward, and then another. He walked into the open space between the scouts and everyone else and looked up at Noah, his eyes droopy with sadness. Then he swung his head toward the sky and let out a thunderous roar. His cry went on, echoing off the nearby buildings and scaring birds out of the trees. Then the mighty polar bear became quiet, leaving the city of species in complete, startled silence. Noah felt tears in the corners of his eyes. He lunged forward, wrapping his arms around the polar bear's neck, and held them tight. Blizzard roared a second time, louder than before, and Noah saw more birds escape into the sky. Very softly, so that no one but the polar bear could hear, Noah said, I love you, Blizz. Blizzard sniffed Noah's arms and legs deeply, as if he didn't want to forget Noah's scent. Go, Tank said, and then he quickly wiped away a tear. Go and remember that the secret zoo is safe. Noah nodded. He released Blizzard and slowly backed away. Then he looked at his friends and said, Let's go home. Silence, footsteps, the familiar touch of velvet, and the secret zoo was a world away. And I'll stop the video there, ending chapter 38, but I hope you guys enjoyed the read today, and believe it or not, we still have the conclusion of the secret zoo. This is not the very end yet, but I hope to see you guys in the conclusion of the secret zoo in our next video, and as always, please take good care and be safe, guys, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.